So what I want to talk about this morning is one of our usual thorny issues in sitting, which is the role of thought and thinking in our practice. So really, distractions such as sound or sensation in the body in Zazen are not really distractions, because if we boil down what practice is, it's to bring our attention to the present moment and, as best we can, stay there. And when we're drawn away, bring it back. So the present moment includes breath, body sensation, other sensations. It even includes thought, if we're not caught in thought, which is what I want to talk about today. The only things that really draw us away from our practice and means we're sitting there and not practicing is if we get caught up in thought, which means we're following the thoughts and immersed in them, as opposed to them just going behind in the background, which when they just go by in the background, they're just like a sound. Buddhism considers thought, thinking, to be another sense gate, which at first seems weird to us. But if you think about it, don't thoughts arise in the mind unbidden, just like sound arises to the ear unbidden? A car door slams outside, a thought arises. It's really much the same. It's interesting if we begin to look at the thinking mind that way, because it removes our sense of identification with what we think, which is pretty basic to practice, because what we think is the thoughts or models of reality. They're not the same as reality. So in our Zazen, the only things that really mean we're not practicing are if we're falling asleep, which is a major hindrance, sloth and torpor, it's called traditionally. If we're spacing out is a difficult one to spot sometimes. It means we're not really present. We're in a fuzzy kind of a haze. And even though in deep Zazen and Samadhi, we may forget our body and we may forget our surroundings, that's entering that depth through a different gate than when we're spacing out. When we're spacing out, we may forget our body and surroundings, but we're in this fuzzy, hazy, floaty, kind of daydreamy place. And one way to look at it is, if we are in deep Zazen and we're really doing Zazen, we're not spacing out, and we've forgotten our body and our surroundings, but we smell smoke, we'll immediately know what to do. We'll immediately sense it, we'll jump up and we'll take action. Whereas if we're spacing out, we might just sit there and burn, right? So it's good for us to try and clarify the difference between spacing out and being in Samadhi, because they can kind of get confused very, very easily in our practice. But what I really want to get to is thought and the role of thought. And many people misunderstand how we're dealing with thought in practice. So there's a koan, which I'm sure many of you have heard. Shan is sitting, and a monk comes up and asks him, what do you think about when you're sitting there in silent illumination? And Shan says, not thinking. And the monk says, how do you think not thinking? And Shan says, non-thinking. Okay, that's one version of that koan. It can be translated in different ways. I'm not quite sure where that koan originally comes from. I don't believe it's in any of the collections we use directly, but it's in the collection that Daido Roshi put together of Dogen's favorite 300 koans, which comes from a document that was unearthed fairly recently. It's often thought that Dogen didn't use koans in practice or didn't value koans. And just because he taught mostly Shikintasa, silent illumination, doesn't mean he didn't value koans. In fact, if you read Dogen's writings, this particular koan comes up again and again and again. So, like a lot of the koans that we hear in Zen, it at first appears paradoxical. What's the difference between not thinking and non-thinking? And really, it's not about defining what those terms mean. It's about clarifying in our own practice how we deal with thought. So there's a way in which we can use one aspect of our mind to keep an eye on our thinking mind and let it fall into the right position. Dealing with thought is a little bit like if you've seen those, what are they called? Those exercises where you visually see things one way, and then all of a sudden you realize it's not the face of a woman, it's something else, right? Yeah, optical illusions. So when you have an optical illusion, you're seeing it one way, and all of a sudden it clicks and you see it another way. So when you see through the illusion, you don't have to do anything, right? It's an automatic process. Once you see through the illusion's gone. Do you all see what I'm talking about here? When you've all done practices like that. It's like, oh, I see through it, it's nothing. So the way to deal with our thinking mind is much like that. It's not that we're trying to get rid of thoughts or oppose thoughts, cut thoughts off, or certainly not suppress thoughts. But it's as though when we see through them for what they are, it's much like seeing through the self in practice. It's not something to be gotten rid of. It's that when we see it clearly, the illusion drops away and we see it and it falls into its proper place, right? So there are ways in which to deal directly with thought and to help our thoughts fall into the proper place. It's not exactly true that a mind completely empty of thoughts is our goal in Zazen. It's a little more finessey than that. If you've ever sat at the ocean and gotten immersed in just the waves rolling in, you're completely present, you're really watching it, but you're not thinking about them. You're not thinking, the waves travel across the Pacific from so-and-so a place, and they're driven by these forces, and et cetera, and maybe it's a good day for surfing and all those things we might think about waves. Sometimes we're just immersed watching them, or maybe it happens when we're sitting by a river and we get immersed in the flow of the water, or at sunset we might really get immersed in the spectacle of the sunset, or sometimes it's watching a baby sleep or a loved one sleep. We're just completely present, right? And a thought might come up, and usually thoughts in that kind of situation are something like as simple as, wow. A little like when somebody was working on the Shakyamuni holding up the flower koan, and Kaya Shop, everybody's waiting for the Buddha to give his talk, and instead he holds up a flower. Well, that is the talk. And Kaya Shapa smiles, right? He's touched by the flower. Maybe inside, if you had to apply something to a smile, he might be going, wow, or some expression of beauty or awe or receiving from the Buddha, but he's not thinking, flowers, what are the genetic properties of flowers? And what species of flower is that? All of those things about it, right? How many people know what I'm talking about when you're completely immersed in experience, but not thinking about it? Now, when you're really immersed in experience like that and a thought flows by, you don't have to tussle with it, right? You might pick up, oh, wow, and let it resonate for a moment, or you might think, so beautiful. I had my nephew visiting. He's now, I think he just turned 30 or 31, but he was visiting me in Taos when he was just, I think, 18 months or 2 years old. And I remember his parents and he were visiting, and we were sitting in a cafe, and when we came out, it was sunset, and I was carrying Alexander, and we just stepped out of the door, and the sunset was framed with this tree in front of it, and the sunset all coming through the leaves. And this little 2-year-old just whispers in my ear, "Oh, how beautiful." Well, I've always remembered that. It's there's not a problem with a thought like that. It doesn't go anywhere, does it? It's not, oh, what's the nature of beauty? What's the nature of trees? What causes the color in the sky? It's just, oh, how beautiful. It's just a heartfelt, immediate response. So those kind of thoughts that just arise of their own accord in response to what's happening, not really a problem. We can just see it, let it go by, right? The problem is thoughts tend to be like Velcro, right? The thoughts are the loop and we're the hook. And, as soon as they come up, we hook onto them, right? We Velcro onto them. And that's the natural way as humans grow into adulthood. If we don't intervene, we automatically Velcro on to our thoughts. However, it's possible to have a different relationship to our thoughts, non-thinking. It doesn't mean thoughts aren't coming through our mind. It means that we're not hooking onto the loops, right? So there are ways to practice directly with this that helps us clarify. It's just, I wanted to mention all this before because there's a particular stance in dealing with thoughts. Oftentimes it's easy to think we should get rid of them, but it's a lot more, well, we all like that time in Zazen where the mind has settled down and we're not thinking and we're just in direct experience. Isn't that lovely? But if we try and push ourselves to get there, we try and manipulate getting there, that doesn't work so well. What tends to work is seeing through the illusion of the thoughts. The illusion being we think of them as real. That's the whole problem, isn't it? A thought comes into our mind, we latch onto the train of thought, and next thing we're thinking, so-and-so doesn't like us. When so-and-so isn't even in front of us, we're thinking about a situation that happened in the past, right? And it's just because they looked at us funny, we think they don't like us, and we go down this whole train of thought and cause ourselves suffering and ruin our relationship with so-and-so who looked at us funny, right? And when we really see that we've gone out of the moment, that we've left reality, as I'm always saying when I talk in session, let's stay with reality. When we get latched onto the thought like that, we've left reality. We're in some past time, or in some other time, or in some imagined place or time. And we're not present anymore. When we really catch ourselves doing that and we really understand that thought is not what we're doing, then we don't have to tussle with the thoughts so much. They will come and go of their own accord. How many people have had that experience of thought coming into the mind, excuse me, just passing out all by itself during Zazen? Yeah, it happens to a lot of us. It's eventually, if we practice long enough, it'll happen to all of us. It helps to register that, to notice that happening, to notice we're in a certain state of mind where we're not latching onto them. Because sometimes it just happens and it goes by and we don't really register it. If we really register, oh, look at the way the thoughts are going by and I'm just receiving them. It helps to reinforce that for ourselves, that's how we want to work towards dealing with it. So I want to try a few direct exercises with you all about looking directly at thought and dealing directly with thought. So a lot of you have done, how many people have ever done labeling exercises? Like just internally, you say to yourself, thinking when a thought comes up, or pain when pain comes up, or physical sensation, or sound when sound arises, right? It helps us. Of course, that's a thinking process, but it's a very simple thinking process that we're just using to label what's happening, so we become crisply aware of it. Then we let go of the label and the thing, right? sound arises. That's a lot different from a car door slammed. Oh, so-and-so's home next door. I wonder if they're going to turn on their loud stereo, and here I am sitting, and whether they're going to play that terrible heavy metal music, and blah, 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 right? So, no, there's just sound. There's nothing else. Just thought, nothing else. So, I want us to try for a couple minutes. Let's just begin by settling back into our zazen, back into our breath. And I'm going to give us some other directions as we go along, and then we'll have a chance to talk about this. But first, just settling into the breath, in the body. Zazen is physical practice. So we can let the attention drop out of the head and just find a place to rest in the body. We rest in the body and just apply our attention as continuously as we can to the breath, knowing that getting drawn away, usually by thought. If we're drawn away by a sound, and then we remember what we're doing, that a sound's not a problem, a sound's part of the moment. It falls into its proper place and it doesn't have to disturb our zazen, right? We'd like to be able to hold thoughts in the same way. One thing that can help is while we're centered in the breath, feeling rooted in the body, in the breath, physically, to turn our internal gaze directly towards the thinking process. See if we can catch the next thought as it arises. And if it helps, we can apply the label thinking. If we don't need the label, we don't need the label. A good way to do this practice is, we have prairie dogs here in New Mexico. If I could sit in front of a prairie dog hole for a long time and be watching for a prairie dog to come up. After a while, one might come up, but in general, while I'm looking at the hole waiting for it, it might know I'm there. And it might not come up for a long time. So in just such a way, when we turn to look directly at the thinking mind, sometimes the thoughts get shy. And they won't raise their heads out of their little thought holes. Let's just take a minute or two and see if we can watch. If the thoughts hide, that's fine. Let's just notice that we can look for the first germ of a thought arising. Sooner or later, one will arise. So thoughts tend to come in two primary forms for most of us. One is the internal monologue, but thought also arises in the form of images, little movies. Oftentimes we play out a scenario. For instance, when I mentioned the prairie dog, the prairie dog hole, that image came up for me. So that's a form of thought. As long as it doesn't go anywhere, it'll just dissolve by itself. But I could also go down the hole, picturing the prairie dog coming up, picturing me doing whatever it is I think I'm going to do when it comes up, which I don't know what that is. I could go into a whole little movie about it. So we watch the mind for words and for visual images. There's no problem when they arise. But if we're watching for them, we have a different stance than we usually do. When I see the prairie dog or wait for the prairie dog, I know very well I'm not the prairie dog. Okay, in a larger sense, I am all prairie dogs everywhere, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the smaller sense. I'm not that prairie dog. In the same way, we're watching for the next thought to arise. Just by very virtue of watching for it. This is how I take non-thinking. We're using one aspect of the mind. A larger aspect to see the thought arise and allow it to pass. Let's see if we can do that. Because I'm not my thought any more than I am the prairie dog. The thought's just a secretion of the thinking brain. The thing that it's so hard to remember is that thinking is not what we're doing in Zazen. It's not a problem that thought arises. It's a problem when we get hooked into the loop of thought and we're drawn down the whole track. Even that's not a problem. It's a natural part of the practice that we catch ourselves lost in thought. And that practice of remembering what we're doing and bringing the mind back is actually an important element of building the muscle of attention. It's an important part of what we develop in Zazen. The ability to bring our back to present moment experience directly. So as we keep watching for the next thought to arrive, I want to suggest a little further extension on the practice. So we've got to know that Zazen's about the present moment, right? A lot of our thoughts are about past and future. If we notice ourselves having a past thought and we label it for ourselves as past, or we notice ourselves having a thought about the future and label it to ourselves future, internally. Just, we can do it verbally, internally, or we can just let it register. Oh, future, oh, past. That's not what we're doing. Right? Just knowing that Zazen's never about the future or the past can give us a little different angle on our thoughts. Just for a couple minutes, see if we can wait for the next thought. If they're still not arising because we're looking at them, that's fine. There's something to learn from that. But as we see them arise, a lot of times it's only after we're caught in them. But let the thought register when we catch ourselves. Is this about the past? A lot of times just noticing it's about the past, our attachment to it will dissolve because we see through the illusion. Thinking about the past is not the same as the present moment. Present moment is what we're doing. Same with future. Let's see if we can do that for a few minutes silently. We're still centered in the breath. We're watching with our greater awareness that thinking aspect of the mind. And when we catch a thought, if we notice it's about past or future, see if we can let that register. And see if that awareness that it's about past or future just allows it to pass through without attachment. Thoughts might appear in the form of words. Thinking about what so-and-so said to me yesterday or earlier today, or what I might say to them later. But they might also be a little movie about something that happened before, or that we'll do later. In either case, noticing if it's about past or future may help us just remember what we're doing and just let it pass. It's not about rejecting thought, it's about when we see through them. That's not real, it's the past. That's not real, it's the future. Sometimes that very awareness, they'll just dissipate like smoke. They'll just pass like clouds in the sky. Letting go of past and future thinking is very helpful, and that can probably take care of the majority of our thoughts. There are other kinds of thought. We sometimes say in Zen there are three problematic areas of thinking: past thinking, future thinking, and present thinking. It's one of those Zen jokes that covers everything, doesn't it? But present thinking, the biggest issue with present thinking is when we're judging what's happening. That means, am I doing this right? Do I see what he's saying? No, I think I'm doing it wrong. No, I think I'm doing it better than the next person. Those kinds of thoughts. So can we also notice that judgmental thoughts are useless in Zazen? So perhaps we can apply the quiet label past, future, or judgment, or judging. We know that those kinds of thoughts are not what we're doing in Zazen. So just reminding ourselves of that might just let them pass. They're not a problem, they're what the mind does. Thought's trying to give us information. So if we're caught in a line of thought, it can help to acknowledge, really let the thought register, and then really be aware that that's not what we're doing. I don't like to say let the thought go. I like to say just turn the attention back to our present moment experience. And we don't have to tussle with what it means to let it go. The thought lets itself go. So we're just quietly noticing past thinking, future thinking, judgmental thinking. If we catch that kind of thought, perhaps just that awareness will let it find its proper place, which is to come and go freely. The other angle to look at thoughts from is we have to know that Zazen is not about the self. It's about going beyond the self. So we might notice when a thought comes up, does it have to do with me? Probably 99% of our thoughts have to do with me. So if we just quietly catch ourselves and apply the label, thinking about me, sometimes just that awareness that that's not what we're doing can allow the thought to release. Not even release, just do what it naturally does, which is come and go. So we're noticing thoughts about past, future, judgment, and self, me. Any of those categories of thought are not useful to us in Zazen. We're not opposing them, we're just seeing through them. So maybe we can take it a step further. As we've already mentioned, thoughts tend to come in words or they tend to come in pictures. So perhaps we can kind of back up further and gently remind ourselves that latching onto words coming through our heads is not what Zazen's about. Latching onto pictures, little movies and stories coming through our heads in picture form, it's not what we're doing in Zazen. Can we just perhaps just label those words or fantasy thinking? Whatever works for you to let it really register that that's not what we're doing. And allow it to just release itself because we see through the illusion that it's real. What's real is being here in our bodies, in our breath, in this moment. The rest isn't our business in Zazen. Perhaps we can even take it one step further. Thoughts or objects that appear in awareness. Words appear in awareness. Pictures appear in awareness. Notions of past and future and judgment and self appear in awareness. But surely in Zazen, our business is not the things that appear in awareness. It's awareness itself is our business in Zazen. So perhaps we can let go not just of words and pictures, but of any objects that appear in awareness. Just rest in awareness. Doesn't mean we're rejecting any more than we rejected thoughts. Any sensation, any object that appears in awareness. Just allow it to come and go. We're just resting in awareness itself. Thoughts arise, it's not what we're doing. sounds arise, they can just pass through, register and go. Emotional feelings arise. If they take our attention, let them take our attention, and when they're finished, let them go. Physical sensation. These are all objects that appear in awareness. So who are we really, these objects, these thoughts? Or are we really the awareness that is receiving all of it? Of course, the objects are finally not separate from awareness either, but that's a different point. Right now, anything is allowed to come and go freely within our awareness, unhindered, not grasped. What if everything came through our awareness without being grasped after? What would that be like? We're not rejecting it, it's there, we're fully aware of it. But we're not grabbing, identifying, hungry for it, or hungry to push it away. Okay, so let's come back to conversational mode, and we have a chance to talk a little bit about what we experienced, whether that was helpful. Any questions about it? Complaints? Issues? Yugen's in charge of complaints today. All complaints go to Yugen. Yeah, anybody want to say anything about what that was like? Did it help? Was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Was there some stumbling block? Including everyone at home. This is for everyone. Yeah, Futai. Good to see you. Oh, you have to unmute. No hurry. In Zazen, we're not rushed.
All right, I think I got it.
All right, I hear you.
Thank you so much because I thought it was very helpful. The guidance and the suggestions were all very helpful. And the first one that you suggested is the one that I learned when I learned to meditate at Naropa, is just when something arose in your mind, you would just simply in your mind say thinking, and it would disappear. And I had forgotten that. So thank you for that reminder. So.
Great. Thank you, Futai. Yeah, it's a good basic practice. It's not always easy to do, but it's a good practice, especially when our mind's really busy. Yeah. Anyone else? Miyazan.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciated the exercise, and I also remember doing it years ago. One thing that I found interesting is usually when thoughts arise, like they seem to appear, and sometimes kind of I stay with them, or sometimes like they just appear and disappear. But doing this exercise, which maybe you're not supposed to be analyzing, but I was like, oh, I'm thinking about the past much more than I thought. And so it was, like a little moment of realizing kind of what are the thoughts that come in pattern, even if the pattern might be all over the place, but then seeing that there's one category that appears more than others.
Yeah. So it's natural that one would realize, oh, really, probably we tend to be either future or past oriented, many of us. So sometimes insight arises and registers in the form of thought. So that's a genuine insight. Oh, I mostly think about the past. Whew, that's interesting. That's as long as you don't go into a whole analysis of that, that's just an insight. And practice is supposed to bring insight. So just like occasionally there's an experience that's so deep and beautiful in Zazen that up in my mind comes something like, wow, or just so beautiful. And there's not the slightest problem with that because it doesn't stick. It's not like, wow, so beautiful. Oh, isn't beautiful lovely? Oh, I want more beauty. How do I get more? It's watching how the mind latches on to things, right? And letting them just be, and knowing that that's not our essential self. It's not our true nature. The thinking mind is an incredibly useful tool, but in Zazen, it's pretty useless. It's the one category where it helped me so much when I recognized just what you're showing, Yozan, which is that 80% at least of my thoughts are about past and future. And so when I first really got that, it was so helpful. I kept applying it to practice for months and months and months. It just worked really well. A thought would come up, that's past, it's not what I'm doing. And it would just fizzle, And then I got, pretty much in that exercise, I brought us through a whole process of insight that happened with me that helped me to deal with thoughts and ultimately all the things that appear in mind. It was just like that. Then I started to realize, judgment. Judgment is not what we're doing. Me, oh no, me is not what I'm doing. And it's not like I even had to think about it after a while. It would just come up and so obviously about the past. It's like seeing through that optical illusion, right? Don't have to do anything with it. It's just, I know perfectly well what I'm doing and this isn't it. So, yeah. Anyone else want to share? Yes, there's somebody who I can't see who you are, but you're raising a hand in the group room.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you if you're speaking already. You might have to come closer to the microphone. Now there's a useful thought. You might have to come closer to the microphone. We don't have to follow that whole thought.
Can you hear me better now?
I still can't hear you well. Can you turn up the volume? Eugen, there's probably a way to turn up the volume or bring the mic just right to you or go right to the mic. Such useful thoughts, all of these.
We've got it turned up 100%. So.
Okay, if you speak up, I can hear you.
I don't think it's set to the mic, to that mic.
I got you. I'm hearing you very clearly now. So thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that is coming up.
Oh, darn, I've lost you again. Can you do whatever you were just doing?
You can set that down. I don't think
You might be right. It might not be on that mic. It might be on the mic in the computer. You might have to go right up to the computer. Hi there.
Hi.
Okay, and the Doksan room computer is the name of one of the computers.
I think we got it. That's fine.
Okay,
See if you can
try now.
Can you hear me better now?
I can. Can you turn towards the other computer? There seem to be two screens. There you go. Now I see you. Hi. Who are you? Do we know each other?
I think we've met briefly once before. My name is Beckett. I sat in person.
Hold on, I'm turning up my sound. It's still tricky. Technical issues. We're doing our best. Okay.
Hi.
Okay. Okay. Hi, what's your name?
My name is Beckett. I've sat here in person one time previously, about a month ago.
Okay. Good to meet you. Can the people at home hear her? No. Okay, so the computer you're looking into, can you unmute that one?
How about now?
It's probably.
Voila. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. Please carry on. I know that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Now we let it all go and just talk. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Beckett. I do hear a bit of an echo, so this might be a bit choppy for me. Is
If
that
you
gonna
turn,
work?
okay, if you turn off, sorry, this is something else. If you turn off the speaker on that computer, if you turn down the volume on that computer, that should
How
take
about
care of the echo.
now?
Good.
It's gonna be okay. But
It's okay. We don't hear the echo. So,
great. Um,
okay.
I've introduced myself 5 times. My name is Beckett. We're
Beckett, good,
done.
good to officially meet you. Yes.
Something that is coming to my mind is the place of like emotional experience in this, which is, I think, connected to but also distinct from thinking. What
Yes.
I have noticed is that sometimes I experience noticing emotion and noticing a pretty immediate connection to a series of thoughts or rumination or fantasy. And once I go to the source of thinking, the emotional experience changes in some way, lifts. And sometimes I notice that the emotion is there without any real connection to any sort of like mental activity. And I'm not really sure what else I want to say about that, but I think that that's maybe an important part of the conversation.
It is. Thank you. So basically, in the open space of Zazen, emotion may arise. It's a common thing. Sometimes it doesn't have any thought process really attached to it. In which case, in my experience, mostly what's happening is if nothing situational has just happened, it's probably our backlog of old emotion, stored emotion, that's coming up and wanting to clear itself. That's one of the things that happens in Zazen. So we just, like we keep our attention with the breath, we keep our attention with the emotion until it's finished. Yeah. So we're with the breath, but we're also letting emotions part of the present moment, even if it's an emotion linked to the past. It's come up in the present moment. It wants to spend itself or burn itself off. And it will, as long as we don't reinforce it by thinking. And our tendency is to reinforce it by thinking. We'll think over the situation or play. If we're angry or we're upset about something, we'll replay the little movie of what happened again and again in our minds, right? And that re-stimulates the emotion, which re-stimulates the story, which re-stimulates the emotion. And that's a cycle that causes ourselves a lot of suffering. Sometimes we can't help it. You know, sometimes the mind has to do a little processing. But where we're headed towards is being as purely with the emotion without thought as we can.